Thank you for joining us on our news on QTV. Here are the headlines. The Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, ZCID, says all is set for the National Democracy and Stakeholders Summit. Government says it is renegotiating the 17-year concession agreement between the Road Transport and Safety Agency RATSA and the Intelligent Mobility Solutions. Police in Petauke district have arrested a 37-year-old woman who allegedly murdered her 3-month-old baby by using a hoe handle. With the news in detail, my name is Machamanda. The Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, ZCID, has emphasized the need for the Commonwealth to come out in the open and declare its stance on who should lead the dialogue process. Briefing journalists ahead of tomorrow's National Democracy Stakeholders Summit, ZCID Chairperson Nathan Mulonga said the Commonwealth should advise the UPND that the dialogue process is homegrown, which must be driven by local stakeholders. Mr. Mulonga further states that the UPND should clearly state in which areas the center needs capacity, unlike simply claiming that it is a moribund.
Is set for the much talked about national dialogue process that is expected to start with the National Democracy Stakeholders Summit on 15th May to 16th May 2018 at Lusaka's Mungushi International Conference Center. The National Democracy Stakeholders Summit is a platform that seeks to bring together stakeholders from different political and non-political affiliations to have an opportunity to meet and discuss pertinently the issues that affect the nation. This is a pre-dialogue process that can facilitate conflicting parties to fully try and understand each other and build consensus on issues of national interest. The summit will be facilitated by the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, ZCID. And briefing journalists ahead of tomorrow's National Democracy Stakeholders Summit, ZCID Chairperson Nathan Mulonga had this signed to the Commonwealth ahead of the process.
And I believe that it is also the onus of the Commonwealth who say that they've been part and parcel of this process of which they started, to clearly come out. I liked what President Arabi said, and I just want to re-echo the same. If the Commonwealth have said that this process should be Zambian-led, it should be their responsibility equally to persuade other stakeholders, since other people in this nation have indicated. And by the way, ZCID is an institution created by political parties, including the UPND. They are part and parcel of this board. And therefore, the issue of them stating credibility when they were sitting and chairing this center for the past 7 years raises a lot of questions.
And the ZCID Chairperson refuted the claims that the center is a surrogate of the PF.
And I think I want to, without anyone thinking we are surrogates of the Patriotic Front as it has been alleged, we are very independent people on this board. We think very, very independently. And we want to assure you that we will apply all fairness in dealing with issues that are going to come to our attention. We'll present them to the rest of the members in order for them to deal with those issues. So really, if anyone is going to talk about those issues, to deal with those, they are totally independent of the dialogue process. And if we want to resolve such kind of issues through dialogue, let them come through to the meeting and talk about those issues and see how best we deal with it.
Speaking at the same event, ZCID Executive Director Monica Kanjimana says the center is also lobbying for more funds to enable its operations during the meeting.
You're very much correct. We do have a budget of $1 million coming from the Ministry of Justice. We're a grant-aided institution. However, when we're embarking on projects like this, we are mandated to be able to generate budgets and solicit for funds from other cooperating partners and donors. And that is the approach that we have undertaken in facilitating for resources for these meetings that we have planned for the pre-dialogue process. So we have submitted budgets to various stakeholders, the European Union, USAID, UNDP, and we have been receiving positive responses from those. We also solicited for funds from our own membership. The political parties, each individual political party has been written to in asking and requesting for contributions to this process.
It is the hope of every Zambian citizen that through these processes, the country can begin to rekindle a culture of dialogue and consultation among all stakeholders. It is also through such processes that the nation can address national issues amicably and avert divisions arising from the conflicts. QTV News, Albert Mpezeni in Lusaka.
UPND President Hakainde Hichilema says the dialogue meeting should be spearheaded by the church and not those with partisan interests. The UPND leader said this when he, together with his vice, Geoffrey Mwamba, met Justice Minister Given Lubinda over the impending dialogue process. Mr. Hichilema says his party remains committed to the process and agreed that it is led by the church. He says during a short meeting with Mr. Lubinda, he informed the Justice Minister that leaders can stop the violence if only they can commit to reforms. He says Zambia does not belong to any politician, and as such it is vital that political leaders come together and talk, but under the umbrella of the church. Mr. Hichilema stresses that the church has a long history of resolving conflicts. Therefore, to resolve the impasse of other parties not interested in the Commonwealth-led dialogue and UPND having no confidence in the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, ZCID, all must agree that the church leads the process. Government says it's renegotiating the 17-year concession agreement between the Road Transport and Safety Agency RATSA and the Intelligent Mobility Solutions IMS. Transport and Communications Minister Brian Mushimba has disclosed. Last year, RATSA entered into a concession agreement with IMS, a consortium of LAMIS and Capiche International of Austria. The agreement is aimed at providing advanced road traffic management solutions and services in the transport sector. Speaking when he appeared before the Parliamentary Budget Committee, Mr. Mushimba said government was not fully consulted on the 17 years concession agreement between the two parties. Mr. Mushimba says government is renegotiating especially on the part of revenue collection and other areas in the document. He was responding to questions by members of Parliamentary Budget Committee chaired by Mbala Member of Parliament Mwalimu Simfukwe, who wanted to know whether the Ministry of Transport and Communications was aware of the contents of the agreement before giving a go-ahead. He stated that the decision to renegotiate the agreement came after a thorough study of the agreement by his ministry and the Ministry of Finance, who considered ways of how RATSA can continue to earn revenue and contribute to the gross domestic product through the agreement.
What the committee wanted from the ministry and why we're here today was to gather more information along what has happened, where we are, and they wanted a copy of that concession. And the ministry was not able to give the copy because when the concession was concluded, there was a process of relooking at it and aligning it to make sure that, if there were any areas that were a bit gray, they could be made clear. And that's what we did. The document covered all the objectives that we wanted as a government. The document hit all the high notes that we wanted it to hit, except in any process, if there are any gray areas, those gray areas have to be addressed. And the gray areas were the few areas, because the bulk of the document really covered everything that we wanted it to cover. But wanted to.
Meanwhile, Road Transport and Safety Agency RATSA Chief Executive Officer Zindaba Soko says inadequate funding to the agency is hampering its effective performance in service delivery to the people. Mr. Soko told the committee that fundraising has not been favorable, which is hampering completion of infrastructure such as offices in various districts across the country.
The challenge has been that the proposals that we've been making, as much as we would reach a stage of actuation of our proposals, we have never gotten that support, and that is a challenge for us as RTSA. When you look at the general issues even to do just the station imprest, even that same station imprest of 20,000 honorable members is an amount that we've disbursed with what we are receiving as funding. Ideally, there are certain stations, like you've rightly put it, which are very busy and are supposed to operate in a certain manner and they need more support, but that has not happened. When you look at Nakonde, it being a border station, I think we have the border station where we have shared infrastructure with other government agencies like ZRA, Immigration.
Police in Petauke district of Eastern Province have arrested a 37-year-old and sound-mind woman for allegedly murdering her 3-month-old baby. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo has identified the woman as Susan Piri of Zuze Village, Chief Kalindawalo of Petauke district, who is alleged to have hit her child with the handle of a hoe, killing the child instantly after the child sustained a deep cut on the head. Ms. Katongo says this happened on 13th May 2018 at about 08 hours in Zuze Village. She says the accused is detained in police custody while the body of the deceased is in Petauke District Hospital mortuary awaiting post-mortem. Meanwhile, 2 people died on the spot while 3 others sustained serious injuries after they were involved in a road traffic accident which occurred on 13th May 2018 around 20:30 hours along the Solwezi Mutanda Road at Mutanda Bridge. This was after the motor vehicle Toyota Noah registration number BAD 3488 they were in overturned. Ms. Katongo has identified the deceased as Rosemary Jitata, aged 42, of Kiawama compound in Solwezi, and Gladys Yalubamba, aged 41, a teacher at Manyama Primary School. She says the accident happened when the driver, identified as Martin Malata, aged 34, of Wisdom compound, lost control of the motor vehicle as it was moving towards Mutanda Bridge. In the process, hit into the bridge guardrails, overturned and rested in its normal position after meters before Mutanda River. She further explains that the injured were rushed to Solwezi General Hospital, while the bodies of the deceased are in the same hospital mortuary. And on the Copper Belt, 2 people died while 15 others sustained injuries in an accident which happened at about 10:20 hours on the Ndola Luansha Road.
In Petauke, police have arrested a woman identified as Susan Piri, age 37, suspected to be of unsound mind, in connection with the death of her 1 year, 3 months old male child. The suspect of Zoze Village, Chief Kalindawal of Petauke district, is alleged to have hit her child with the handle of a hoe, and the child died on the spot after sustaining a deep cut on the head. This happened yesterday at about 8 hours in Zoze Village. The accused is detained in police custody while the body of the deceased is in Petauke District Hospital mortuary awaiting postmortem.
Health Minister Dr. Chitalu Chilufya says the outgoing 19-member Chinese medical team that came into the country a year ago has contributed significantly in strengthening health systems at Levi Mwanawasa Teaching Hospital, the University Teaching Hospital, Ndola Teaching Hospital and Livingstone Central Hospital. Speaking at the awarding ceremony of the team in Lusaka, Dr. Chilufya says the team has, among other things, helped in improving service delivery in the 4 health institutions. The minister has further thanked the Chinese government for upgrading the Levi Mwanawasa General Hospital into a teaching hospital through its expansion from 150 to 850 bed spaces. Dr. Chilufya says these and many others are key fundamentals to human capital development, which will contribute to the economic growth of the nation.
Central Hospital, a teaching hospital, was supported through expansion from 150 to 850 bed space. The National Training Institute that government has been building has been annexed to the hospital, creating the first ever medical university under the Ministry of Health. This speaks to human capital development, another fundamental pillar in our health system strengthening program. In terms of strengthening medical equipment for service delivery, this year Zambia will have the first endoscopy center at Levi Mwanawasa Hospital. And our doctors are already, our staff are already in China to train, and the equipment is already continuing. The new hospital, the expanded facility in the hospital, will be state-of-the-art and will be a big symbol of the Zambia-China friendship. As we speak about the relationship between Zambia and China, we will.
Speaking earlier, Chinese Embassy Charge d'Affaires Shen Shiji said the outgoing team helped in training a group of high-level medical staff in Zambia. He says this was done through a clinical training, academic lectures, and mutual expert visits, bringing Chinese medical treatment methods and advanced medical ideas to Zambia. Mr. Shiji has since reaffirmed his government's commitment to supporting Zambia's health sector.
他们高尚的医德、精湛的医术，赢得了赞比亚人民的赞许，也让赞比亚人民看到了中国医疗技术的飞速发展。Since 1978, China has dispatched 19 batches of medical teams with a total of 515 doctors and experts to Zambia. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the Chinese medical team in Zambia. Their high professional skills and good medical ethics have gained high respect and appreciation from the government and people.
Information and Broadcasting Services Minister Doris Leah says government will not rush the enactment of the Access to Information Bill. Ms. Leah has told a media briefing in Lusaka that this is because of the abuse of the cyberspace by some sections of the public. She states that while government remains committed to the enactment of the Access to Information Bill, it will not rush the process until there is an effective regulatory framework to deter abuse of information. Meanwhile, Ms. Sulia says there is nothing sinister about President Edgar Lungu being given land by the government of Swaziland. She says President Lungu was given land together with his spokesperson Amos Chanda, which has since been put on title. Ms. Sulia says the president receives many gifts from other countries, that this should not be a problem.
Digital migration, where we've made a lot of progress as government. We're also going further, working with the Chinese government to start the Village TV program. The Village TV program is part of a bigger agenda where over 10,000 villages in Africa will be given access to digital television. Here in Zambia in particular, we are hoping to provide television to over 500 villages. This is digital television, and very soon we'll be calling upon His Excellency President Lungu to officially launch this project in one of the rural areas. What this will entail is that we'll be providing as government, with the support of the Chinese government, communal television facilities in a number of villages, and this should assist our citizens to be able to access television facilities. This is part of the bigger agenda to provide universal television access in Zambia within the next 2 years. The digital migration itself will be...
The matter in which an Indian national, Vipan Gautam, is charged with defilement of a child contrary to Section 138(1) of the Penal Code, Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia, and 3 counts of indecent assault on females contrary to Section 137(1) of the Penal Code, Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia, has failed to take place or take off in the Lusaka Magistrate Court due to non-availability of witnesses. In the first count, Mr. Gautam is between 31st March 2018 and 6th April 2018 alleged to have had unlawful carnal knowledge of a girl below the age of 16 years in Lusaka. And Mr. Gautam is within the same period in 3 other counts alleged to have unlawfully and indecently assaulted 3 different girls in Lusaka. But when the matter came up for trial, Magistrate Fides Hamaundu adjourned the matter to 28th May 2018 due to non-availability of witnesses.
Why are you taking my pictures? What for? What for? What for? What for?
Meanwhile, the matter in which one member of parliament, Chishimba Kambwili, has been cited for contempt of court for allegedly tampering with evidence in his forgery, uttering false documents, and presenting false documents to a public officer case has failed to take off. This is because Mr. Kambwili was not served with summons. Mr. Kambwili, who was supposed to take plea before Magistrate Sunge Chanda, could not do so because summons were served on his lawyer instead of himself in person. Mr. Kambwili's lawyer, Christopher Mundia, has since written to the state asking that the summons be served on Mr. Kambwili himself. The matter is expected to come up on 17th May 2018 for plea. Commerce, Trade and Industry Minister Christopher Yaluma says government is committed to addressing trade barriers between Zambia and its neighboring countries, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo. In a speech read on his behalf by Ministry of Commerce Permanent Secretary Kayula Siame during the GIZ Kasumbalesa Trade Facilitation Project workshop, Mr. Yaluma said, in its quest to address challenges that hinder trade, government is preparing a border management bill that will deal with the management of border processes. Mr. Yaluma notes that government is aware of the many challenges that are faced at border areas such as Kasumbalesa border, which it intends to address with the collaboration of partners and stakeholders. He says intra-regional trade creates jobs and therefore should be encouraged for it to contribute effectively to the economy. Mr. Yaluma is therefore optimistic that the 2 days workshop for Zambia and the DRC will deliberate on how challenges being faced at Kasumbalesa will be addressed.
Everything being equal, we have registered about 700 to 900 trucks cleared every day at Kasumbalesa border post. However, I think, as you know, we still face a lot of challenges at this border, starting from infrastructure, the border processes, the procedures, the administration, the coordination, the security, a lot of these challenges. But these challenges for us will not stop us from going forward and ensuring that we can facilitate trade and make it much, much easier to do business at this border. So let me hasten to add that the government is determined to deal with these challenges. However, we know that we cannot deal with them on our own. And that is why we have sought the cooperation, the support of our various partners to work with us to ensure that collective...
Speaking earlier, GIZ Head of Cooperation Frank Hoffman noted the need to boost trade between Zambia and the DRC and stated that intra-continental trade in the Africa region generally is low at only 10% currently.
So trade facilitation is even more important to African landlocked countries, which have to depend on the transport infrastructure of surrounding countries in order to make access to regional and international markets. As German Development Cooperation, we recognize that the two countries are taking the lead with implementation of the various provisions of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement within their respective jurisdictions. We are also aware that many other cooperation partners and development agencies, and especially the private sector, are already implementing trade facilitation interventions at Kasumbalesa or are in the process of doing so. Therefore, our approach on the implementation of the Kasumbalesa Trade Facilitation project would be to closely collaborate with the two countries involved, and we will seek coordinated delivery of trade.
The 2 days workshop is aimed at addressing trade facilitation challenges at Kasumbalesa border and discuss the way forward for the €2 million 2-year Kasumbalesa trade facilitation project between Zambia and the DRC, which will help boost trade between the two countries. Government has been called upon to consider quickly announcing the maize floor price for the forthcoming marketing season. UPND Chairman for Rural Reconstruction and Development, Mono Mapani, tells QTV News that farmers, more especially in rural areas, are eager to know the maize floor price. Mr. Mapani has also appealed to government to consider offering farmers a higher price compared to last year's price. He states that for the farmers to be motivated, government should consider offering not less than 100 kwacha per bag of maize. Mr. Mapani has further advised the government to start preparing for the 2018-2019 farming season now.
Currently, we expect the Patriotic Front to announce a floor price, particularly of maize, at not less than 100 kwacha per 50 kgs. Because we are looking at the prices for the inputs. The fertilizers price has gone up. The seeds price have gone up. And there is no way you can expect anything less than 100 kwacha per 50 kg bag of maize. And this will help the farmers to actually plan and meet you, though not really, but meet part of the demands on buying the inputs for 2018-2019 farming season. Anything less than that, this will purely destroy the entire agriculture sector. And when we talk of agriculture, mind you, there is farm animal agriculture and crop agriculture. Now, when you center again on the animal agriculture, the Patriotic Front has failed to provide leadership in livestock.
The Customer Unit Trust Society International CUTS says the increase in water tariffs by Lusaka Water and Storage Company will no doubt affect the low-income consumers. The Lusaka Water and Storage Company, LUASCO, has increased water tariffs by 15%. CATS International Zambia Center Coordinator Shanai Makumba tells QTV News that this will also result in the high cost of living for the people. Ms. Makumba says there is need to ensure that wages and incomes for the people begin to increase even as the basic necessities increase. Meanwhile, Ms. Makumba has called on the Lusaka Water and Storage Company to address the shortage of water in the city, as most people are finding it hard to get the commodity, more especially in peri-urban areas.
You know, I think when it comes to issues such as water, we need to be particularly careful whenever we are limiting access. Whenever there's a situation that arises that hinders, access to water, particularly, in low-income areas, we need to find solutions that can be done as quickly as possible. Water is one of the basic necessities for life, and the minute you start restricting that and don't have a solution that's able to resolve it as soon as possible, you now start to jeopardize, the health and safety of consumers. And so I think, as a consumer organization, we would therefore urge, the Lusaka Water City, the WSC, to ensure that, the issue that's currently taking place is resolved as soon as possible. And particularly because it's affecting low-income areas, what you then tend to find is these are the areas that are most in need and have difficulty in accessing alternatives, to water. And so it's important to...
Western Province Permanent Secretary Sibanze Simuchova says over 6 million cashew trees will be planted in the province in the next 3 years. Mr. Simuchova has disclosed that the distribution of cashew seedlings has already commenced following the release of $55 million US by the African Development Bank for the Cashew Infrastructure Development Project. He is hopeful that once production is in full force, the province will contribute significantly to the national treasury, considering the market that cashew nuts have. Mr. Simuchova adds that the project will also contribute massively to job creation in the province.
We have a cashew infrastructure development project, $55 million funded by African Development Bank. We would like to plant 6 million cashew trees over a period of 3 years. We are now distributing seedlings, cashew seedlings, to ordinary village folk, and women are very active in it. So they are given 100 free cashew seedlings, and that translates into 1 hectare of cashew. So I'd like to have these cashew plantations. And the attraction is that cashew is a high-value crop, which a ton of which many times is higher in value than a ton of copper. And
that's all we had for you in our news, but before I take a run, here is a recap of stories and the headlines. The Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, ZCID, says all is set for the National Democracy and Stakeholder Summit. Government says it is renegotiating the 17-year concession agreement between the Road Transport and Safety Agency RATSA and the Intelligent Mobility Solutions IMS. Police in Petauke district have arrested a 37-year-old woman who allegedly murdered her 3-month-old baby using a hoe handle. That's all for the news. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless. Continue watching QTV.